Hey everyone, and it's Amy from Money with Soul. Today I am back to chat back, baby. Um, so I am wanting to, today's topic is around the 10 soul money map principles for budgeting, but really that's just around the title. I wanted to sort of go into the basics of how we do budgeting because I think that it can seem really boring, but when we start to feel into the energy of money, it can actually become very exciting. Now, I know that that doesn't sound very exciting, but I think for me, when you start to shift into a sacred surplus, and I talk a little bit about this sacred surplus, it feels good. And so when you have the sacred surplus, what that looks like is like then you can start to think about, well, what is my wealth generation strategy when we're in when we don't know what's going on with our budget or our cash flow, soul flow, however you want to say it. We can often not know what we're going to do because it sort of feels like it just feels like it's not clear. There's no clarity. So why do you want to budget? It's because clarity brings with it opportunity. And that's what I wanted to sort of touch on is just some of the basics around your budgeting and your cash flow and why the sacred surplus is more of an energy thing and sort of how do we bring some of the principles of heart into this practice, because if I ask you a question, what answers? Is the answer from your mind of what you think should answer or what you should do, or is it from your heart? And this is something that when we start to move away from answering life um, from the place of shoulds, like I know this is a good thing, I know I should budget, I know I should do this, but what's actually happening is I'm avoiding my money because I just don't like dealing with it. And I just hope that all the bills just sort themselves out. There's an energetic thing there, and the heart can feel tense. And so, where there is tension, there's resistance, and what resists persists. And so, if you have the energy of resistance in your money life, then that's going to be reflected in all of your creative space, in your lifestyle, in your ability to have fun and express yourself. So I wanted to go through the basics of budgeting, but also just touch on some of the soul money principles because we do it a different way. And it's not that the budgeting isn't still working out your income and your expenses, which is what we're going to go through. But it's also about asking yourself the question of, am I energetically aligned to abundance? Am I energetically aligned to wealth creation? Am I energetically aligned to expansion? What is my life asking from me? And how can I show up? Am I showing up? That's something that the money story in our life reflects what's happening for us internally. And so the soul money principles, it's budgeting isn't about restriction. And I don't know if any of you have gone on a diet where um, you're trying to lose weight, and that's something that I touch on this because I'm going through a big forming of myself after kids, refinding my own body and my own and going on a diet feels restrictive, but really it's actually empowering. It's just how you're looking at it, because when you see that excess drops away, and that can be the same in the budget, then it starts to feel good. It's just at the beginning it feels hard. So it's about awareness, and it's about showing up in your life for what you actually are wanting to create and not letting life just slide by through your subconscious conditioning and that life just happens. And then one day you wake up and think, shit, I haven't actually done what I wanted to do with my life. Um, the other thing that, principle is your money should reflect your values. And so it's not just your obligations. So like in your lifestyle and your values do not need to have a huge amount of money for them to be present. Your values and your lifestyle goals are really something that can be present irrespective of your bank balance, because there's something that you choose to decide to represent in every moment. And so when we start to actually uncover the physical aspects of our budget, we can start to see where our energy is flowing. And if it's simply just flowing to all our obligations, then are we actually depleted energetically? How do we carve out space? And this is something that I had the experience of having a financial advisor when I was really young, and I had debt, and I was in a very horrible cycle of this guilt and this debt and this overspend and this guilt, this debt, this overspend. And we decided that, you know what, we're just going to start investing. And it was the best thing because it meant that I had a wealth creation strategy, even also with this crap going on over here. And even though my budgeting didn't get better for a lot of years, or my money, my energy flow of money didn't get better for a lot of years, it also gave me something, and that I could actually feel the energy. I'm also creating wealth, even though I was in a deficit. It actually changes the energy. And so there's lots that this stuff can uncover, and it might not be what you really think. And sometimes, and I truly see this, when you are aware and clear, things become easy, things simplify, the decisions simplify, the actions simplify. And so simplicity is power. If your money system is too complex, if you're not consistent, if you're not got the structures in place to help you do this in a way that's simple, it's going to feel too hard. But I wanted to come back into this. So, okay, budgeting. Now, we have income. So the basics is we have income that comes into our life, and that can be through personal exertion. It can be through investments like investment properties, or through shares, income, dividends. It can be through family income. It could be any. There's income that comes into our life. And so when that income comes in, that is our energy of money. And then when we start looking at how it's allocated, we look at the proportion that has to go towards, say, there's bills. Now, in the expenses, so it goes to our expenses, and I'll go into the detail of expenses, and then what's left over is called your sacred surplus. But we want to change the way you think about this. We want to think about how do we create a sacred surplus that matches our vibration energetically, and then we adjust our expenses to fit within our income, or we look at other ways to generate income. So once you start to look at this from more of an energy point of view, when we are drawing income in, we're giving a value into the world. We are offering us our value and our resources into the world, and they are paying us in an exchange. And so we have to look at it from an energetic, are we aligned to the value we're creating in the world? Because that is so important for us to feel good about it. And so if it's an obligation, I need to do this to get money. And very much so at the beginning of your career, or when you're young, or when you're starting back, or all these things, then you might not have a lot of value to offer. And so it's important for you at that stage to become more resourceful, to become more valuable, so that your value grows. Because if you think about it, if you're more valuable to someone, they're willing to pay more for what you can offer. And so we start to build our values through learning, through different experiences, through job experiences, through career, through mistakes, through different things. That grows our pool. But even if you think about it, like investing and wealth creation is where you take your value and you invest it into something else that will create an income. And so that's when we start to see different income streams build our wealth. Generally, it's an asset that gives us an income, and you are the asset that generates income when you go to work every day. But whether or not that's aligned to your heart, to what's important and what you're good at, is the question that you have to ask. So the income comes in, and then we have this pool of allocation of expenses. And when you think about it, we look at things like we have fixed expenses and we have variable expenses. A fixed expense means that it doesn't change. So it is something that you have to pay. So think of like now they can change if you change your circumstance. For example, if you sell a property and you no longer have to pay that mortgage, that's changing your expenses. But if you then have to rent, it might be less, it might be more. There's still an expense there that you have to pay for a home until you're debt free. Now, when you're looking at your expenses, these fixed expenses can be broken up into debt and into bills. And those things are things, a bill is something that if you don't pay it, someone's going to be knocking on your door. And so it's something, it's an obligation that you have to pay. Things like electricity, things like your rates, things like your insurances, all these things. Actually, insurance is not so much, because really you just will become uninsured, but there's all these things that go out that you have to pay. Your debt is something that you pay to maintain your home, but you've got good debt, you've got bad debt. um, we talk about good debt being debt that is tax deductible, so it's an investment debt. So when you buy an investment property, it's deductible off your expenses, and so we're not going to go too much into that at the minute. This is more about your budgeting and your expenses. So you look at your fixed costs, your debt and your bills, and then we look at our variables. So our variables are things that they can change. And that's when you're looking at creating a sacred surplus, it's when you look at your variables. So your living expenses. Your living expenses are made up of things like your food, your grocery bills, your transport. All of these things make up your living expenses. And then you look up your discretionary spending, or your personal spending is what we call it in the soul money map. And that is things like your hair, getting your hair done, going to the barber if that's what you do, going out to restaurants, like entertainment. All of those things we would put into the personal spending. And so when you start to put together the pieces, we start to see how our allocation is made up. Now, I know that if someone doesn't put any money in their personal spending, things are going to get really tough, because you need to allocate something there. That could be holidays, it could be something that you enjoy doing that costs some money, like going to the footy or going to a yoga retreat. All of those things start to go into that personal spending. And when you look at your expenses and you're saying, okay, everything, what I hear a lot is everything is important. But the question is it? And so there's lots of ways to start to review both your fixed and your variable expenses and think about it differently. Because if at the end of the day, you're not in a sacred surplus, what that's going to lead to is stress, it's going to lead to anxiety, and it's going to lead to not a good future, because it's going to deplete you of your energy. And that's when you think about the energy in your money. If we're being depleted all the time and we're having to find money here, there, and there, it's exhausting. And so really looking at this stuff and seeing, okay, I have to be within my means and I have to have a sacred surplus. We have the control. So one of the things, for example, is there's so much access to bulk purchasing these days. So you can go to Amazon, you can go to Costco, you can go to or any, there's so much, there's access to so much stuff that you can do to reduce your expenses. And so looking at ways to reduce, whether it be your food bill, whether it be your your home goods like your washing detergent, or all of these things can be reviewed on the basis looking at your phone bill and seeing whether or not your plan, you really use all of your what's in your plan for your phone. That's one thing that you could do. Repricing your health insurance, they seem to go up and reprice all the time, and there's often different deals that you could leverage in that place. Same as home insurance. Insurance is a one you should review every couple of years to see if there's savings that you can make. And also looking at your cover and making sure it's to your needs. There's so much in that, but essentially when we look at the fixed costs, we put that down, and then we look at the variable and we look at ways that and if you're in a sacred surplus, that is amazing, because it's the energy of abundance, it's the energy of prosperity. But the question then comes, what are you going to do with it? Where are you directing your energy? Because if you just let it go and let it spend here saving, there's no intention behind it. And it's that's the energy that you can create, you can invest, you can build, you can create creative, you can change jobs, you can do all these things when you start being intentional with your money. So just to recap, the goal isn't to have control over every dollar. It's about a system that can hold you so that you can focus on your lifestyle and what's really important, so that you can become the manager of it rather than the operations of it. Let the system support you. And that's what we do in the Soul Money Map. The Soul Flow setup is a simple cash flow system that enables you to just set up and automate all of your bills and all of your expenses. And you essentially pay yourself a wage each week that you spend, and you know when you go over your budget simply by having to transfer money from another bank account. And I just think that when we feel that we are allowed to spend on what matters, we're allowed to be creative with our money. We're allowed to look at ways that we can build our wealth. We start to feel that this is the system of our life as well. It's not just the system of our money, it's the system of how we manage everything in our life, whether we're proactive, whether we're reactive, whether we can create simplicity, ease, and non nervous system triggering stuff. So I'm going to leave it there, but I just wanted to say thanks for listening, and if you get anything out of this, please share it in the comments. I look forward to chatting next week. See you later.